only wants you to make good beer and have fun hanging out with your friends. Here's Dono. Today's project is to add these raspberries to this beer. This is, I'm just calling this a raspberry blonde, but this was with the lager yeast that I fermented in the upper 50s with no pressure. So far it's tasting fine. I put a gallon into this jug, and that's for several reasons. The first is I was going to try to make less beer because you get some volume of liquid out of the raspberries, and I only have a 5-gallon keg, but I ended up making 5 gallons. Anyway, so I need to have the space for the raspberries. They may kick off some additional fermentation, and then, like I said, if I don't, like let's say I end up with 4.5 gallons in this bucket after the raspberries come out, I can always use some of this to top off the keg. And the other thought is I might bottle whatever's left of this just in some 12-ounce bottles, and then we can taste that alongside of the raspberry beer. So that is the thought on that. Now, one thought about how many raspberries is, here is this red thing, which is cider, which was sitting in here, and if you ever see me do my shots in here, you sometimes might see this. It's kind of the cider corner where the cider is always sitting until I need to keg it, and I added, like, I don't remember, 10 pounds of raspberries, and it just made it super raspberry-y. And so I was gonna do like 12 or more pounds. See, look, I still have like 4 or 5 pounds there, 4 or 5 pounds there, 4 or 5 pounds there. So I was going to do more raspberries for this beer, but I also, and it still is probably going to end up this way, but it's just going to taste like raspberry juice. And Chip said, well, couldn't you just add less raspberries? And I thought, I could try that. So maybe, so this will be an experiment. This is 8 pounds. If this still makes raspberry juice without much residual tasting of the beer, or in the other case the cider, well then if I want to make it lighter, then maybe I do 4 pounds. You know, maybe I do 1 of those freezer bags. So at any rate, I'm going to get these raspberries in this beer, get this gallon jug out of the light, and let it sit for, you know, like a week, as it's commonly said to be enough time, and then keg it up. Well, I just thought I would do a video of my own here to get this wrapped up. This is not the experimental, interesting videos that they are sometimes, but here is this raspberry beer. The question was, is it just going to taste like raspberry juice? That's sort of what I was calling it. And the other question is that preferable to having it be less intense? Or would it be nicer to make it milder and have it be, you know, less raspberries? Now, I have a number of thoughts on this topic, but I am curious to hear what y'all think. Somebody talked about them using black raspberries, so then they didn't get the red color and they got a different flavor. And of course there's all kinds of fruit you can use. What this is, I was able to bottle 3 bottles out of that 1-gallon jug that you saw in the previous clip. I ended up racking about half of that 1-gallon jug back into the keg. I had about like 4.5 gallons of beer after I did the raspberries, so I wanted to top the keg off, but then I had enough to bottle 3 bottles. So all I did was put half a teaspoon of sugar right in the sanitized bottle. Nothing overly precise. I've done it that way in the past. I've had one other of these bottles with chip, and I mean, it's going to be no surprise that the raspberries will have given it a lot of color and flavor. But what I was curious about is if you could taste this beer in this beer in any way. So it was just a blonde, kind of average type of a beer. I'd have to look and even see what I put in there. I mean, it's an okay beer on its own, but after putting in 8 pounds of raspberries in the 5 gallons, this head has a little pinkish hue, which I think is kind of funny. I don't know if this light is the best light for you to see how red it is, but I'll probably use the picture that I took, that I put on my Instagram account for the thumbnail, and you can just see that this beer is really red. So the thought is, if this beer is too intense, or if you want it a little bit less intense, what you can do is blend it in another glass with some other beer. I've used to have that Potter's beer on tap, and I did a blend a bunch of times with that. If you have like a kind of a Pilsner, even if you have like a American Macro beer that is just light and you just want to kind of temper this down a little bit. So that's always a possibility, but most of the time I probably just drink it like it is. The overall flavor is tartness. Like a citric acid, I don't know, I just probably not the right kind of acid. Whatever kind of acid is in those raspberries, it reminds me of the tartness in a sweet tart. There's just some kind of acidity there that's bright. It's not unpleasant at all, but it's not like this. I mean, this is a more malt forward, lightly hopped beer experience, whereas this is kind of, as I've been calling it, more like raspberry juice. So I always go back and forth. Would I rather have a less strong raspberry beer on tap that maybe is a little more enjoyable just to drink, or would I rather have this on tap that I could drink it at full strength, or I could blend it to any different degree, 50-50. I could just put a little kiss of a different beer in there. You know, I could put a little bit of this strong raspberry in a glass of porter or stout to make it have a little bit of a raspberry flavor to that type of beer. So I always go back and forth, but I always tend to come down on the side of making it stronger. And I do think that this 8 pounds is about all you need. You could do more, and you might get more character and more color and tartness and flavor, but there's going to be a saturation point, right, where you're just like 20 pounds of raspberry. Like there's going to be a point where it's not going to make that much difference. I think the 8 pounds is pretty strong, and I looked it up, and I made this 3-fruit wheat, I called it, and it was the same type of thing. It was really forward on the fruit. It was 7 pounds of raspberries, 2 pounds of plums, and then there was a little bit of cherries in there, and it was really just all about the raspberries. But again, that's like 7-8 pounds of raspberries. So I kind of think if you have it strong, you can drink it at that strength. If you made it weaker, well, then you can't drink it strong. And the other thought is, I have got so many of these darn raspberries. So what am I going to do with them? I don't eat jam. I'm not going to make a raspberry pie. I mean, certainly I could give them away. I've made a couple of raspberry meads, and they turned out great. However, it's just a lot more involved. It's a lot more of an expense. It's a lot more of an undertaking. I even thought about it with all the raspberries I have on hand, but as you saw in the previous clip, I turned a cider into a raspberry cider, and then I made this beer, and I still have a bunch in the freezer to do something else with. So at any rate, if you use fruit, I'm curious, do you like to do lightly flavored, you know, a mango Hefeweizen? Do you like to go all in with the fruit and make it strong? I kind of just pick the raspberries when they're in bloom and accumulate as many as I can, and I just feel like I might as well use them. But that's me. I just thought I would do a quick little tasting on this, and catch you later.